Progressives, conservatives, and libertarians can be considered as the three types of political viewpoints most dominant in the West. Progressives stand up for oppressed groups, value humanism and science, but view markets as unfair. Conservatives stand up for traditional values favoring law and order, while libertarians believe in liberty, choice, small government, and capitalism. Some issues are best viewed under one perspective than another, but in order to more fully understand politics, we need to consider it from a multidimensional perspective. If you think of yourself as a Democrat or a Republican, you might be wrong. Political ideology is far more complex and multidimensional than this. Arnold Kling in 2019 outlines the three types of politics, describing what each group values most. Progressives stand up for the poor and the oppressed. They support women, minorities, immigrants, and other societally disadvantaged groups. Their axis is the oppressor-oppressed, contrasting those in power with those who have none. Recently, progressives have framed whites in the role of oppressors and African Americans as the oppressed. Progressives believe that humans can improve themselves. They are humanistic, seeing people as able to make themselves better both materially and morally. They tend to revere science, especially the social sciences, as a way to inform legislation. When it comes to the economy, progressives see markets as unfair, favoring corporations and the rich. Conservatives stand up for Western values. They support moral virtues and traditions. They argue along the civilization-barbarian axis, contrasting order against chaos and change. They frame criminals and demonstrators as threats, with the police as the defenders of order. Conservatives believe in human weakness. That is, they tend to focus on the darker or more fallible side of human nature. They believe that these instincts must be kept in check by social institutions like family, religion, and government. They revere the past and have a bleak outlook on the future since it is deviating away from traditional norms. Conservatives see markets as promoting virtues like hard work and persistence. Libertarians support the right of each individual to make choices. They believe in limited government and argue along the liberty-coercion axis that contrasts freedom against government control. They frame government agents who criminalize activities as villains and free citizens who are denied their rights as heroes. Libertarians believe in rationality, that people can think and act appropriately in their own best interest. They revere technology and see industry and capitalism as liberating forces. Libertarians see markets as promoting cooperation. People in each of these groups fall back to defend one side of their axis. When this happens, we signal within-group solidarity and out-group exclusion. It also asserts moral superiority, a we are better than thou type of attitude. When this happens, it becomes impossible to work with members of the other group, and three-way polarization occurs. There is some merit to each of these positions. Kling encourages us to not fall back on these frames and instead examine an issue from multiple perspectives. He asks us to be more cautious and open-minded when engaging in political debates and uses a number of examples to illustrate. One of them is taxation. For taxation, a progressive would want to tax the rich to pay for the poor. A conservative wants tax reform that promotes traditional values to reward hard work, investment, and married couples with children. A libertarian wants the smallest amount of taxation possible, such that we can all spend our money as we see fit. An open-minded individual might be able to come to a compromise by acknowledging all of these perspectives. A welfare law could be passed that provides incentives to work by reducing taxes, or that distributes the source of the tax across a broader segment of society. This approach is more practical rather than ideological in its orientation and involves some degree of accommodation. There are also situations where an issue is best approached from one perspective. Kling lists the civil rights movement as best understood within the progressive approach, the issue of urban crime from within the conservative outlook, and the legalization of marijuana from the libertarian angle. Trying to satisfy all parties all the time will probably not work. But if we only stick to our preferred heuristic, then nothing will ever get done and the country will devolve into political gridlock. It is better to get out of our fixed mindsets and relate to what opposing groups are thinking. This will enable us to better communicate and cooperate with one another. Being open-minded does not mean abandoning our ideology or trying to convert everyone else to it. It does mean that we need to engage in deeper thinking about issues and not to have knee-jerk emotional reactions. Take the current debate on abortion. Instead of banning all abortions like conservatives want, or allowing them as libertarians do, we could instead investigate those cases where it might be appropriate, such as in rape, incest, or early on in a pregnancy. Another way to think of basic political orientations is to take the world's smallest political quiz. This consists of 10 questions and was designed by libertarian advocates for self-government. Half of the questions are about economic issues, and the other half about personal issues. The point system determines the degree of an individual's stance on either economic or political freedom. The scores determine one's location in a two-dimensional space. The corners of the space represent different ideologies. All the way to the left is the liberal or progressive view. To the right is the conservative view. At the bottom is the statist or big government perspective that would correspond to communism and other forms of socialism. And at the top is the libertarian view of minimal government. The middle region in between all of these corresponds to a more neutral centrist position. This representation shows that the unidimensional view of politics is impoverished. It is better to think of political views as multidimensional and best represented in two or, more accurately, many more dimensions. Politics is more nuanced and complex than we realize, so any given ideology with its focus on just one axis doesn't capture the entire picture.